Give
Now
her
we
a
got
little
a
extra
stool.
height here.
That's a tree.
Just so I can get a little exercise while I'm preaching today. I'm going to do my steps. I'll put this out for you if you want. Okay. She does ballet, so she's often on the tips of her toes.
Really? Ready? We sing of golden mornings, we sing of sparkling seas, of prairies, valleys, mountains, and stately forest trees. We sing of flashing sunshine and life bestowing rain, of birds among the branches and springtime come again. We sing the heart courageous, the youthful eager mind. We sing of hopes undaunted, of friendly ways and kind. We sing the roses waiting beneath the deep piled snows. We sing the earth's great splendor, whose beauty round us glows.
Thank you, Madeline and Maura, for that wonderful start to our service. No, you can bring it, please. Julianne is so nice. She said, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" I said, "Yes." Thank you so much. So I'll take my first sip. Very, very thoughtful. So good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or, as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. I want to begin as usual by welcoming all of you to this space, all that you bring with you, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences, all that helps make you who you are is welcome here this morning. So welcome to one and all. Welcome to those who are in the room with us, as well as those of you who are live streaming with us and those of you who are Zooming with us this morning as well. It's great to have all of you. I do want to make a special introduction to my friend Dave Pfeiffer, who is sitting up front here. He's traveling across the country, and this is the first time we've met in person, but I've known you and your father, a retired Unitarian minister, both of whom have been very supportive and interested and whatnot around all that has happened since 2019 and the aftermath of the Gadfly papers. And anyway, Dave's written some nice stuff online. Some of you probably seen some of it. You won't remember, but it's been, some time ago you wrote some reviews and whatnot. So appreciate you stopping by to see us. And he didn't have anything else to do today, so he's going to stay for both services. Now that's a trooper. Anyway, thanks so much for being here. It's great to meet you in person. Yeah. And also want to say hi to our attendees who are on Zoom. So, it looks like we have a good group behind us there. So I see everyone that I think I recognize everyone. Yeah.
There's about 10 of us here, and we're starting to see very familiar faces, and it's nice that we're getting to know each other and hoping to know you, and welcome Dave to the home base.
That's right. That's a good way to put it. This is the home base, but we have a church that exceeds the boundaries of our physical walls and have members from all over the nations these days. So welcome to you guys. It's always great to have you with us too, and good to see your faces for a bit during our morning as well. So welcome to one and all. Let's take a few moments, as is also customary for the start of our services, to greet one another. And I'll greet my coffee. All right, and more opportunity to visit during social hour following our service. And real quickly, before we move forward with the lighting of our chalice, I notice another David is joining us on our Zoom this morning from up in British Columbia. There he is, yeah, New Westminster. And Dave, we were talking during our social time following yesterday's service, NAUA service, and we got cut off. And we were right in the middle of an important conversation, so I don't want to leave you hanging. I want to get back to you with your question about ministers and speakers, NAUA and that kind of stuff. So hopefully we can reach out to each other this week and finish that conversation. So, all right, let's move forward now with our chalice lighting, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world, and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The opening reflection today comes from Robert Fulghum, Presbyterian minister, and perhaps best known as author of All I Really Needed to Know Is What I Learned in Kindergarten. Every person passing through this life will unknowingly leave something and take something away. Most of this something cannot be seen or heard or numbered or scientifically detected or counted. It is what we leave in the minds of other people and what they leave in our memory is memory. Census doesn't count. Nothing counts without it.
Please rise as you're willing and able to sing number 97. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. And I chose this song to get some of the moans out. So if you'd like to moan from the gut, this is the song to do it. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home. A long way from home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great selection today. And we're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning, and we'll begin with a candle on behalf of the people of Ukraine and that part of the world that are being most impacted by the violence there. I'm sure there are lots of other situations in our nations and in the world that we care about, as well as individuals in our lives. So let's take the usual moment of silence on behalf of those you might be thinking of. And as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. This is the third Sunday of the month, the time of the month where we hold a special collection, and this month's special collection is on behalf of Shalom Ministries. You've probably heard about Shalom Ministries before, but may not know that they've been serving meals to the needy in Spokane since the 1970s. Been a real institution in our community. Last month alone, they served over 5,000 meals, reaching many of Spokane's homeless and poor. And Shalom Ministries also works to provide some who are in their program laundry services and shower privileges, bus passes, skill training, stipends, and pathways to permanent housing. They also continue to provide blankets and coats and sleeping bags for those who have no shelter in the colder months of the year. Obviously, a very worthy cause and an important institution in our community that I'm sure you'll want to contribute to. If so, please use the special collection envelope in your order of service. If you are streaming with us or Zooming with us, you're always welcome to make a contribution online or send a check, and just make sure you put July special collection in the memo line. So we certainly appreciate the generosity from all of you, and of course appreciate what Shalom Ministries is doing in our community. So we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
Sound of music, with songs they have sung for 1,000 years. The hills fill my heart with the sound of music. My heart wants to sing every song it hears. My heart wants to beat like the wings of a birds that rise from the lake to the trees. My heart wants to sigh like a chime that flies from a church on a breeze, to laugh like a brook when it trips and falls over stones on its way, to sing through the night like a lark who is learning to pray. I go to the hills when my heart is lonely. I know I will hear what I've heard before. My heart will be blessed with the sound of music, and I'll sing once more.
Thanks, Todd.
You're welcome.
Todd brought out a stool so that I looked a little taller than I am. What a treat that song was. That's been my favorite movie since I was about 3 years old. So thank you. All right. Well, this morning's story for all ages is something I've adapted from a story written by Christopher Buisse. And unlike Christopher Buisse, last week, Max, my son, and I spent a week at Camp Dartlow. He was a camper, and I was teaching kids yoga. And one of the activities that they offer the kids is sluicing, which is mining for gems. And liberal religious education is a little bit like sluicing, or mining for gems. We try to teach our children discernment. The word discernment means from the Latin word discernere, which means to separate, to distinguish, or to sort out. In other words, we try to teach our children and ourselves how to be gem miners. The process of gem mining, or sluicing, is simple. You take some dirt, you put it into a strainer, you run the creek water through it, and you sift until you find a gem. Mining for ideas requires the ability to make decisions about what's worth keeping and what we should sift out and throw away. This can be really hard, whether we're aware of it or not. We learn our values from videos, books, magazines, friends, and so many other sources. Parents and caregivers, we know that we can't shelter our children forever, but we can teach them the process of discernment and the art of mining for ideas that are true gems. We can help to awaken their conscience so that they will be able to make responsible choices, to separate things of value from things that have no value. So I hope that all of our kids and all of you have what it takes to mine some gems. Thank you.
This is a time in our service to shift our focus. Get comfortable, breathe slowly, and consider these words of Robert Fulghum. It doesn't matter what you say you believe. It only matters what you do.
I do have a responsive reading today, number 568 from the back of your gray hymnal, number 568. And I apologize to those of you online that I can't get my act together enough to select readings right before the service. Sorry, 658. Can we say dyslexic? 658. 568 is too long. But anyway, Madeline is going to read so you can at least benefit from hearing the entire reading, and it's kind of a meditation. And I will begin once I actually get to the page and ask our entire congregation to be our respondents this morning. Back to 568. Yes.
Wait.
Okay.
Which one?
No, it's 658. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
got it.
I was on 568. I scrolled through and went right back to where I started. It's called circular reasoning. Okay. So this is an appropriate one after this. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool.
To weep is to risk appearing sentimental.
To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self.
To place our ideas, our dreams before the crowd is a risk loss.
To love is to risk not being loved in return.
To hope is to risk despair.
To try is to risk failure.
To live is to risk dying.
Thank you.
If you know this song, you can hum along or sing the words if you know it.
Every morning you greet me, small and white, clean and bright. You look happy to meet me.
Thank you both so much. Beautiful. So last month I gave a sermon about the challenges of democracy and the many disagreements the Enlightenment thinkers who fashioned our Western democracies had about it. Some of them believed that it would be best to have a benevolent monarch rule in the interest of human welfare with no checks and balances. Others believed a monarch's authority should be tempered, even overridden by parliamentary elites and nobles who had the stature and wisdom to do so. And others believed in a representative democracy in which a government's leaders are chosen by those they govern. But nobody argued for a pure democracy in which everything, all of a country's laws, policies, economic decisions, and so forth, are decided exclusively by the masses. This is so because none of these thinkers considered the masses smart enough as a whole to make sound decisions. Who knows, they might even elect an unqualified populist to run things, and nobody wants to end up with an incompetent nincompoop in office. As I mentioned then, Plato believed this very outcome inevitable, and therefore considered democracy little better than tyranny. He said, "How grandly democracy sets her foot upon all our fine theories of education, yet how little she cares for the training of her statesmen. The only qualification which she demands is the profession of patriotism. Such is democracy, a pleasing, lawless, various sort of government, distributing equality to equals and unequals alike." Now, Plato would probably be canceled for saying something like that today, because he's openly acknowledging that not everyone is equally as intelligent, and that those who govern us ought to be among the most intelligent and well-educated a society has to offer. And I understand his point and agree that electing popular figures to lead us just because of their celebrity can be troubling and lead to troubling consequences in our democracies, as all too often happens. Ronald Reagan, Jesse Ventura, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jerry Springer, and of course, Donald Trump are but a few of those who have been elected to high positions because of their celebrity. It has frequently been my experience that even on a local level, area television personalities like former reporters and news anchors handily win elections over more experienced candidates. We like to elect the popular kids. Today, populism is compounded by an increasing inability for any of us to adequately distinguish fact from fiction, which is making a lot of voters uninformed and ill-informed. We live in an age of information overload, if not information chaos. There is so much information on the internet and social media, much of which is misinformation or intentional disinformation, that it's becoming impossible to know what is and isn't true. Additionally, we are well into an age of unreason, resulting from those counter-Enlightenment thinkers who rejected reason, truth and knowledge, and glorified feelings over substance, subjectivity over objectivity, and group beliefs over individual freedom. So in addition to not knowing who or what to believe, there are many postmodernists today who don't believe in truth or objective reality, and therefore accept that one person or group's ideas are just as valid as another's, that all beliefs are equal. Now, with artificial intelligence and its deep fakes on the scene, there may be even greater reason for us not to trust what we see with our own eyes. Despite all of this, as a liberal whose values remain rooted in those Enlightenment principles, I still believe our representative form of government, in which every citizen has a voice in choosing our leaders, is the best form of government there is. Liberalism demands that people have a voice in how and by whom we are governed. It is for us a moral imperative. So the solution to a poorly educated and ill-informed citizenry is not to eliminate voting, but to provide adequate education and reliable information. The solution is not eliminating democracy, but to make it better. This brings us back to Plato's point about having properly educated citizens running our governments. That only an elite few were properly educated back then meant that only a few were qualified for the role. But again, the other solution is to properly educate everyone, which is what Horace Mann, and a Unitarian, helped establish by creating publicly funded education in 1837, only 50 years after the signing of the Constitution. But it was only 2 years after its signing that Thomas Jefferson famously said, "Wherever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government." Now, this statement was made in a longer letter of response to Reverend Richard Price, a moral philosopher, Enlightenment reformer, and a Unitarian minister in London, who had written Jefferson about the successful adoption of the Constitution, which some historians believe Price may have actually helped fashion. Jefferson's entire sentence says, "Wherever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government, that whenever things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied on to set them to rights." He was talking about the 13 colonies having signed the Constitution, initially only 11, because they had become awakened, in his terms, from the sleep of despotism in which they were sunk. Setting things to rights in this context meant overthrowing despotic governments. Signing the Constitution was only the final and most peaceful act in what had been a long and violent revolution against tyranny. So Jefferson wasn't referring to public education when he made the statement about a well-informed citizenry. But it makes sense that there is no better way to become well-informed than through a proper education. Or does it? Educators and education systems can also come in the form of indoctrination that benefits the ruling elite and the status quo. There's no guarantee that education will bring out the best in people and not instead be conducted in the interest of the very despots that democracies are meant to thwart. Remember the so-called re-education centers run by the Communist Party in Vietnam, which were really prisons for hundreds of thousands of soldiers and military officials which participated or fought on behalf of South Vietnam? The same goes on in China today, and Russia is currently re-educating thousands of Ukrainians captured in war and some children who've been kidnapped from Ukraine. And even in democratic nations like ours, who decides what should be taught to children and why? I recently watched a panel discussion on artificial intelligence during which a young boy, I'm guessing around 12 years old, asked the following: "I am a kid, so I still go to school. And in school, a lot of kids have been cheating or, quote, cheating and they've been using ChatGPT to write essays, to do book reviews, to do their math. And I guess my question is, one, how do you think schools should evolve to deal with that? Or do you think that it's really cheating if it's a tool that we're going to be able to use later on? One of the panelists, Andrew Ng, a Stanford University professor and founder of 2 AI companies, responded that transparency is the key. Are the students being honest about using AI and following the class rules about doing so, which is a great question, unless the rules are you can't do so at all. Another panelist, Imad Mostaki, founder of Stability AI, said something a bit more provocative. Cheating implies it's a contest. Schools should not be a contest. I think most schools are basically childcare systems based on status games. I think schools should embrace this technology, and they should really think, how can we impart knowledge into individuals? How can we impart critical systems? Because again, you will never not be without this AI as you grow up, and you have to prepare for that. Now, being married to a dedicated school teacher and knowing others like her, I'm not sure I agree with classifying teachers as child care workers. But I do agree that AI is here to stay and that kids need to learn how to use it productively and responsibly, and they need to do so immediately because it is about to change everything, far more than any technology or anything else ever has. But the phrase Imad used that bothers me, that really bothers me, is his question, how can we impart knowledge into individuals? For I do not believe children are depositories that society has a moral right to impart knowledge into. Surely we need to teach them what we need to know to survive and thrive in today's increasingly complicated world. Just as surely as we must teach them how to safely cross the street and later to safely drive down the street. And learning how to properly use AI tools will become more important than learning to use the computer is today. But at its core, education isn't about putting knowledge into kids. It's about leading them to discover knowledge for themselves. It's not about teaching them what to think, it's about teaching them how to think. That's what the word educate means, from Latin, the Latin term meaning to draw out, to bring forth. It's about teaching kids to discover and use their own faculties and agency in the world. A lesser-known Franco-German Enlightenment philosopher, Baron de Holbach, born in 1723, was the first to propose free education for both boys and girls. Holbach was a royalist, meaning he believed that government should be run by a sovereign but benevolent monarch. And he believed that if a king must be loved, then the king must deserve to be loved, and that it was the state's responsibility to make sure he received the kind of education that would make him a wise and caring king deserving of his people's affection. Holbach also thought it was the state's job to educate its citizens to love their king, saying the happiest state is that which contains the greatest number of enlightened people. Here is how historian Morris Cranston summarizes Holbach's idea of what such education should look like. The aim of all education should be the improvement of morals at the same time as the enlargement of knowledge. The teaching of history, for example, should be designed to show pupils how virtue has contributed to the past, to the glory and prosperity of nations, and how vice has brought about its decay. The teaching of sciences should be directed to awakening the pupil's awareness of the usefulness of science as distinct from the purely academic content. There should be no wasting of time on dead languages, but there should be daily teaching of a moral catechism and moral code so as to prepare children for a life of virtue. Moreover, this education should be provided for girls as well as boys, for women can acquire a patriotism, a greatness of soul and wisdom, of which men themselves are incapable in corrupt and enslaved nations. Using public education to teach people to love their king may sound a bit Orwellian, but Holbrook probably considered it no more so than beginning each school day with a Pledge of Allegiance, as is done in the U.S. public schools. Still, as enlightened as his vision of public education was, we still must wonder who decides what moral catechism and moral code will be used to prepare children for a life of virtue. And virtue according to whom? The industrial model of education, which has since been used in most democracies, in which every child is considered the same and taught the same material, is about shaping minds, not liberating them. Again, being married to a teacher, I know that this has changed a lot in recent years as we've come to realize children have different aptitudes and learning styles, and one style of education does not fit all. But public education remains a source of controversy and control in our societies, as ideologues of all kinds seek to take control of our school boards and libraries in order to deposit and withdraw what information they see fit to shape, not free, the minds of children. So again, who decides what goes into the depository and what's removed? Who determines what our kids can learn and what they can't? Until we can satisfactorily address these concerns, it's fair to say public education isn't necessarily the solution to democracy's problem. Namely, how does society ensure it has a well-informed public that can vote wisely in order to promote the common good and human well-being? We've had 186 years of public education in the U.S., and things aren't looking so good for us. Occasionally during the day, I ask my Alexa to play the headlines. After listening to the top stories on NPR, I switch to CNN as long as I can stomach it. Both of which currently seem to be more concerned about an actor's strike in Hollywood than the fact that the earth is hotter than hell almost everywhere on the planet, including record-breaking temperatures in our oceans. At least the heat did make it onto the front page of the New York Times yesterday, right after stories about expensive medical bills for amputees, 2 stories about a serial killer, Republican candidates running for office, the fault in a failed submarine design, a Canadian politician threatened by China, and the Hollywood actors' strike. What's happening to our planet right now ought to be of far greater concern than all these other matters, and should be treated as seriously as if there were a meteor racing toward us large enough to wipe us out. But we're collectively too dumb to take it seriously. Our democracy itself is so divided and dysfunctional that our government can hardly accomplish anything that meaningfully addresses any of our biggest problems and concerns. Meanwhile, our uninformed public succumbs to irrational conspiracy theories and unsubstantiated social media claims, while segregating into identity groups and echo chambers that despise outsiders. They are not the well-informed, well-educated public that we desperately need to make rational decisions about the direction we're heading and which leaders we need to help get us there. We are not the well-informed, well-educated people necessary to make our democracies work. So what now? What, if anything, can we do about this? First, we need to recognize and understand the underlying cause of what's going on is fear. Mistrust is a symptom of fear. We're on information overload, which makes it increasingly difficult to know who is telling the truth, so we're afraid to trust anything we're told. We mistrust and therefore are afraid of groups outside our own, which has led to social segregation, incivility, unrest, and political gridlock. We mistrust and therefore are afraid of science and medicine, which has led to a disastrous disbelief in the climate change happening right in front of us and to an irrational fear of life-saving vaccinations. We move toward extremism and embrace conspiracy theories because we are afraid. We go into denial because we are afraid. We attack and cancel those we disagree with because we are afraid what they say might be true and what we believe might be wrong. We're afraid because if we're wrong, we might be dead wrong. We reject objective reality and truth because we're afraid to face and cope with reality because the truth might hurt. We favor emotionalism over reason because we're comforted with what feels good inside, not by what's really happening outside ourselves. And so, we are not a well-informed public because too many of us are terrified of information. We're terrified of the truth. We're terrified to face the challenges we face. That's the first step in helping the human family cool its heels and maybe start cooling the planet in the process. Recognizing the root of our problem is fear, some of which is justified and much of which is not, and that even our legitimate fears must be faced, not ignored. The fear of being crushed in a submarine beneath the sea is nothing to worry about. But the destructive consequences of global warming are a reality happening right now and a concern that must rise to the top of our list. The submarine story is a distraction from reality. Few of us will ever have to worry about having our images used in a Hollywood film without our permission. But gun violence and mass shootings are happening throughout the U.S. at least every day. It's the only thing our government seems able to accomplish is making it harder for women to get abortions. The Hollywood strike is a distraction from reality. This is where liberalism comes in, and Unitarianism in particular. For ours is a religion that is meant to help us face reality and in turn to help our communities and our societies face reality. As cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker says, we children of the Enlightenment embrace the radical creed of universal realism. Although we don't claim to fully know reality or grasp ultimate truth, we still believe in it. And we believe empirical evidence and sound reasoning can help us increasingly understand reality and truth better than anything else. As frightening as it can be, we believe in reality. And so we are ready and eager to cope with it, no matter how much the truth may hurt. As for public education, in addition to teaching kids that they need to know what they need to know to function in today's changing world, including learning how to use AI and other technologies, we must consider teaching them how to think, how to reason, and how to rationally filter through the monsoon of information at their disposal. The primary purpose of education. Education ought to be about teaching them to become lifelong teachers of themselves by drawing out their native curiosity, their courage, civility, and their powers of reason. That's who we want them to become. Free agents, free, capable, brilliant, open-minded, fearless agents. And that's where the healing of our society must begin, with the next generation, reducing their anxiety and irrational fears by giving them the tools to cope with the real world. But there is also hope for this generation. If we can promote these same coping strategies, respect for the worth and dignity of others by respecting their freedom to speak for themselves and to freely partake in a society's benefits without prejudice or persecution. Respecting their ability to reason and think for themselves without interference from any authority. And respect for their individuality by tolerating the many differences in our pluralistic societies. These are the principles that make us feel secure in an uncertain world, and that make others feel secure around us. And they are our principles. They are the principles that bring us calm in the eye of a storm of information flying wildly around us, so that we can courageously face it all and rationally consider it, and in this way become the well-informed people our democracies require. Whenever the people are well-informed, they can be trusted with their own government. That whenever things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied on to set them to rights. May it be so.
Please rise to sing number 299, Make Channels for the Streams of Love.
Make channels for the streams of love where they may broadly run, and love has overflowing streams to fill them everyone. But if at any time we seize such channels to provide, the very founts of love for us will soon be parched and dried. For we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
The closing words today are from someone with whom we are all likely very familiar. I believe we're all one family and need each other in times of grief and gladness. And I believe in the power of human ingenuity and the people of goodwill to make a difference in the world. This is my credo as a Unitarian Universalist. It is what Superman and I have in common. Christopher Reeve. Unitarian Universalist. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.